Yeah, Dan, you threw a couple of numbers at us and some things like that, but I guess I'm curious how big is this movement and which direction does it seem to be going?
Like again, 1.7 million subscribers on the actual subreddit, but that doesn't mean all those people are looking at it every day. Somebody can be subscribed from a couple of years ago and never touched their Reddit account. And we're also talking about a plethora of blogs, forums, YouTube channels, book authors. I mean, it's impossible to really calculate, I think, exactly who is doing this and who's not. And there's also some intersection between other communities. Again, the incel community, not the same thing. And pick up artist communities also kind of have different things. There's MGTOW, there's like all men going their own way, in case you're not familiar with that. It's so broad. It'd be hard to calculate. I have no idea, but I imagine it's got to be in the millions if we're talking worldwide, at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, numbers aside, I know that this has been around as an idea for around about 10 years. Does it feel like it's going in a particular direction? Are they gaining more credibility or more clout?
I think what really legitimized it and what got them into the mainstream was like the Gamergate stuff. And like, hopefully nobody is still talking about Gamergate. If they are, then I got some news for you. That was a little while ago and other people have moved on. But like, that's when you first saw the cross section between the red pill, the alt-right, the 4chaners, like everything. It all kind of culminated around that kind of 2014-ish, 2013 era. And that's when I think you saw the zenith of that movement. I don't know how popular it is in terms of, I think the language and some of the ideas are still around, but it's so disseminated at this point that I can't point to particular sources which one's more popular than other ones, but the ideas are there, and they're definitely not going to go away. That's for sure.
I'd say the one that I've been hearing the most about recently is incel culture. That seems to be the most prominent current version of this whole concept, which is a very, again, specific subset of this overarching philosophy that centers around, involuntary celibacy and the fact that you've never had sex and you've never had a girlfriend and all of this. But for me, I think that's the one that's been popping up the most, at least in my searches. But
yeah, I think that's what's more prominent right now, especially that language is going around, like the Chad versus the Virgin memes. Like, that's funny to us now. Those were started as real posts of people complaining about like their lives and stuff like that's and that did come from the incel. Now, I don't know if I explained the particulars of the differences, but really, again, the main difference is the red pill is more about pickup artistry, self-help stuff, whereas inceldom is more of a set science of you need to have a specific jawline, and they talk about Becky's and Stacy's, different kinds of women and how they've been treated throughout their lives, and just the frustration. It's more about the frustration of navigating that experience rather than really trying to do much about it.
Isn't that called taking the black pill? Isn't that the difference there?
Taking the the black pill is more of a nihilistic outlook on life. It's like you can't.
Self-help is done now. Yes.
You're so bad.
Self-help.
Yeah, you're in such a bad place that you can't actually move on from your circumstances. That's kind of the difference. Yeah,
which is a horrible, horrible thing. Like I've been on some of those Reddit threads just to check it out and see, like, okay, what is this? And I walk away depressed. Like, I'm like, this is horrible to live in this mindset and be not only have it be acceptable, but encouraged and part of a subculture where people applaud you for how terribly nihilistic and down on yourself and self-hating you can be. It's horrible.
And oh my gosh.
The thing that punishes you in every other part of your life, you finally have a place to put it that feels empowering. Like you are succeeding at it.
You find a community that validates you as well and your experiences. Because here's the worst part about this, in my opinion. I think the way that we've been talking about incels and incel culture for the past couple of years has been totally off base. I can't tell you how many posts or videos I've seen of people shaming incels for being virgins. Like the thing that they've been complaining about. Okay. Like, yeah, they know that. And you shaming them for that, how is that helping? That's only reinforcing the narrative that they're unlovable and they don't fit in. And like, I get it. There's a lot of harassment that happens in these communities, and obviously a lot of violence has happened. But like, how are we helping the situation by just outright shaming them for the things that they openly admit they struggle to? Like on some level, it's almost kind of bullying. It's easier to talk about this stuff online, but we're not seeing these people face to face. But some of the stuff people say is like, you wouldn't say that to that person if they were right in front of you. That's just not,
Well, it's just a punishment mindset rather than a rehabilitative one.
Yeah.
So I know we, kind of poked around the edges of this with Jonathan, but it feels really important to recognize, like, what are some of the hallmarks or dog whistles to know that, your son is talking about ideas that come from this community or even ideas that you yourself might be exploring.
Yeah, so we can talk about some terminology, I think would be a good place to start with that. Obviously, I mentioned the term sexual market value. That's a pretty big idea. This idea of it's a subjective number of, how you look and what your lifestyle is like and how you're socially kind of interacting with people. What's your value in sort of the marketplace? And maybe that's different in different countries. Different people value different things. Like, on some level, there's like a truth to that. Like there's traditions that you can follow up with that some people associate with success, right? That people find, but like, to again, basing your whole identity on this and trying to make this your thing, like you see that happen a lot. So sexual market value, that's one big term. I had some other terms to talk about, but like I want to give an example of the pseudoscience, because I don't think we've tapped into that too much. So
Sure.
The 80-20 rule. Have you guys heard of the 80-20 rule?
Yes, which statistically is just a puzzle box.
the math just doesn't work.
It doesn't work, right? So the idea behind the 80-20 rule is 80% of the women are trying to get with the 20% of men, the top quote unquote 20% of men. I don't know why
all men have 5 girlfriends.
Right. I don't know what that means. I guess it's more like, these people are having sex with all of these sexually viable candidates, as they might put it, or something, and not everybody else is having access to that. It's based on something called the Pareto principle, which was a economic idea started back in 1896 about like 20% of the effort causes 80% of the effects. That's economics. That doesn't actually necessarily apply to people. And there is literally no studies about this in a human context where this applies to anything. And people talk about it, how, this is the rule. This is why people do things. But there's just nothing. There's
you
nothing
can't argue with science, Dan.
Yeah.
Also, isn't it kind of like a circular argument in a way? So it's like, if someone has had sex with more than one person, they are by definition in the 20%, which would mean that anybody who had sex is in the 20%.
I guess so.
Had sex is in
It also depends on your lifestyle choice too, right? Like if you're having these kind of open relationships with people, like not everybody's really into that. That may possess, all the things that somebody might be looking for in a partner, but like that has to be an active pursuit, right? So it's kind of, you have problems with how you're defining people doing this stuff, which is why these anecdotes might be convincing. Because if you're reading this stuff, it's like, I had sex with like 5 women last week. It's like, if you spent, time, if you're at college and you don't have a job and you're spending time doing that, like it's probably an environment where that's going to happen more than, I don't know, anywhere else. But
Also, kind of this actually reminds me of a point I was going to make it to one of Alex's point, which is the concept that like if you go out on a date at night, like you want sex, whereas like who has time to go out on a date during the day outside of college? Like it seems like a very like early 20s of dating, because like I don't have time to go out on a date at 2 p.m. Like I'm an adult, like I'm kind of late.
Not to mention, after 30, daytime sex is the best sex anyway.
I'll take your word for it, but like, you know, there's other concepts too, because again, this goes to this idea of how we're defining and talking about women is hypergamy. I don't know how to say that word. I don't know if you know it's a real, but it's
Hypergamy.
hypergamy. It's like polygamy except hyper. You know,
Right.
so it's this
Like-
idea that
Yeah.
it's weird, right? So like it's this idea that women are constantly looking for partners that are kind of a higher sexual market value, basically a higher social caste than them. And that's kind of the goal. So if they find somebody that they think they can get with, they'll cheat on you and they will go for it. You know, there's no loyalty there. Like women cannot love for the sake of love. That's something that you'll hear them say. It's purely for a transactional thing, whether it's sex or money or something. And like, I don't know a guy that's not. I mean, like everybody wants to find somebody that's like that they consider high in you know their classification system, right? Like we're all looking for someone
Always
who's
date up. Yeah.
But you know, if you've been like again, if you're young and you're with other irresponsible people and you've been cheated on by somebody who didn't treat you right, and you read something like that's like, yeah, that makes sense to my experience. Like they were trying to look for somebody else, and that's what happens when young people do stupid shit. And when you find that when you get older and people are looking to have real relationships, you know. That typically changes, but that doesn't change for everybody, and you'll see that too in some of these stories. So yeah, I can keep going with more terms if you want. I have a whole list. I mean,
hit me with your favorites. I think we got time for a few more, but I do want to make sure to leave some space just to talk about the path out.